Whew, man, I don't like this weather. So right now, what we're gonna be doing in this video is we're gonna continue to work on the 240, the S13 hatch. I know it's been a little while. This footage that the video is gonna start off with is from about a month ago. Notice in the background, you're gonna see the Mustang. The Mustang's gone, thank God. And also, you're gonna see the Del Sol. But the Del Sol is done. I had to get that finished and knocked out of the way because the owner of the S13 decided he didn't want the sound deadening inside when it's painted. And I definitely agree with him. To paint the interior of the vehicle over the sound deadening would not have looked good. So that's where this video is going to start off a couple weeks back. What is up, you guys, and welcome. So today we're going to be continuing working on the S13. I got a bunch to do. We got to keep going on Bodywork, and that's the game plan.
And now, you're watching the dirty wire stripper minus the wire of YouTube. Welcome to BodeVision.
Hey, so what is up and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me on another video. This video we're going to be back working on the S13. Obviously, you saw the thumbnail, you saw the title, you saw the intro to the video. S13, we're making progress. We're getting this thing closer and closer to being done every single upload. So the game plan is right now, I want to get the back bumper pulled off, fuel door pulled off, and then we're going to work on bodywork a little bit more. Now I got the car done, well, this part of the car done, and while I was filming, I thought it would be a cool idea to kind of do a time lapse following the sander. That's what I just showed you guys a little bit of, but I wanted to cut that off. I thought it would look a lot cooler, and honestly, I don't know. Explaining is losing. Let's get back to work. I'm gonna grind this area down. There's a real big dent there and it's pretty rusty, so I'm gonna grind that down all the way to bare metal before I get my dent puller out, or stud welder, and then slide hammer to pull out that dent. Body filler over that. Then I gotta do body filler over this area, and there's a low spot right there, and then we just gotta keep working. So at this point right here, we got the body work coming along real nicely. I haven't touched it since, you know, a month ago, but that was just a second ago. But anyway, so before I started today, what I wanted to do was vacuum out the entire interior before I start grinding, because I didn't want to grind in dust from previous grinding. And probably at the end of every day or the beginning of every day, I'm gonna have to vacuum this out. The problem is, this is the interior and every single surface is gonna be painted, and that kind of sucks because it's like the floor. So that's catching all the dust. Everything that I'm sanding is landing on top of it. So what I like to do to make sure that I leave everything clean is to just keep cleaning as I'm going, and that's how I found it to work best for me when I'm working on an interior like this. So now what I have to do is I just have to keep on grinding, and that's figuratively and literally. I gotta grind the interior. I just gotta keep my nose down, keep working. The only way that I can make sure these projects get done is if I just bang them out. So now that I'm done using the grinder on the floor section, the next thing for me to do is start working on the bars. The reason why I'm using the grinder in the first place rather than my sander and sandpaper is because all over the floor there's a whole bunch of drips, and it looks like to me it's just seam sealer. It seems like whenever the guys at the factory were doing the corner seams, they just weren't too careful because there's carpet over the car anyways, so they probably had the mindset of it doesn't really matter. But now what I'm having to deal with is nasty drips all over the place, and I just want to grind them right off. If I were to use my sandpaper, it would get all gummed up and nasty. Then I'd be blowing through a whole bunch of paper. A whole bunch of paper equals a whole bunch of money. The grinder just grinds it right off. And oh yeah, working with the grinder, I'm using a flap disc, and I'm not using an 80 or a 60 grit flap disc, which is a more common grit when you see them at the store. You got to make sure you're using like a 120, or I don't know if they make them any higher, but that's what I'm using. I'm using a 120 grit flap disc, so that way it doesn't grind into the metal too bad. Then I'm going to go over and sand it over by hand before I lay down my filler primer. Oh, locked and loaded, boy. We are ready to go. Well, not completely ready to go, but we got the bars pretty well sanded down. As you can see, we're making great progress. The floor looks kind of crazy now, but it feels really good. That's what's important while you're working on this. I still got a little bit more work to do. I got a little sanding to do, and then I'm gonna mask it off and prime it. And that first layer of primer, that's gonna really tell me how well I'm doing. I might only have to do one layer of primer if I get everything down and it looks real good, but if it looks really bad, I might end up doing a second layer of primer. And the primer that I'm gonna use is the same primer that I always use, and that's a filler primer or a high build primer. And the reason why I like to use that is because it gets in the cracks really nicely. Well, to a certain extent it gets in the cracks. If you're leaving any kind of big major cracks, it's not going to fill in there, or any huge scratches, it's not going to get in there. You got to have your surface sanded to, I'd say, probably a 220 grit, or maybe a little bit rougher. It'll work if you do the primer pretty thick. So that's the game plan. So now that I vacuumed the car out, my next plan is I'm just gonna blow it out, so that way any of the dust that's kind of in like any of the side areas like this, that'll all come out. And I'm gonna use my electric blower to blow it out. The reason why I like to use an electric one is because I know there's gonna be zero chance of it getting anything bad on the surface that's gonna ruin the paint job. Man, plenty more work to do on this 240. That was just kind of like the first round. I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow, and probably the same thing after that, until I feel like the car is ready to lay down that primer. And then, like I said, depending on how that primer lays down, we'll either have to work it a little bit and then lay down that base coat and clear coat. And speaking of base coat, we're just going with the OEM gray. I don't know the color code right now. I'll put it on the screen. Boom, right there on the screen. So that's going to do it for today, and that's going to do it for this video. And the next video, I think it'll be the next video, depending on what I'm working on. I'm going to have some really cool announcements for next year. Like I said in my last video, you're definitely not going to want to miss that. I promise you, it's going to be cool. So 2018 was the year that I started my YouTube channel. My first upload was at the very beginning of this year, and it kind of gave me an outlook on what it is to make YouTube videos and to have interactions with you guys and to just put up my best work and see what kind of feedback I'm getting. And I really feel like 2018 got my feet wet. 2019, I'm trying to drown in this YouTube stuff. So that'll be coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Look out for that. Like this video, comment, subscribe, do all the stuff. You know what it is, YouTube. I'm out.
what you need to me.